All right, we're live. Thank you everyone for joining us for another WP Crowd. Today we're talking to some awesome people about meta boxes and specifically meta box plugins. Before we get into it too much, I just wanted to do a quick high-level 101. But before we even get there, let's do some introductions. So I'm going to start on my left. If you just take 2 minutes to introduce yourself, we're going to start with Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim True. I am the project manager and support lead at Pods Framework, Pods Foundation. I handle all the stuff on the Slack chat and on the support forums.
Cool. Matt.
I'm Matt Cromwell. I'm head of support at wordimpress.com, and I do all kinds of crazy things with meta boxes, including daring to try to build them myself sometimes. It's ridiculous, but happy to be here.
And Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Kingsley Clark, and I'm a Codeaholic. Hi, Scott. I am the lead developer of the Pods plugin, senior web engineer at 10up, and I also contribute to a number of other plugins and libraries like CMB2, custom field suites, and most notably recently the core project for Fields API that we're going to try to get into 4.5 or 4.6.
Don't say 4.6, please.
4.5 all the way.
4.5.
And as usual, I'm Roy. I'm a WordPress developer at Disney, and I also run Art Control, our main product being CodeCavalry.com. So custom meta boxes, really high level. Matt, I want you to give me a quick. What is post meta? What are you creating with these things, and why do you need them?
Okay, cool. I would say post meta is basically all of the extra data that is attached to a post outside of the content, basically. I don't know. These guys would probably answer better. Like things like the title, is that actually considered post meta? That's saved in post meta, isn't it?
Everything's in post meta.
Post object.
Yeah, pretty much. It's all there.
There are some core fields that are part of the post object: title, content, excerpt, post author, those sort of things.
Yeah. They're all,
the featured
all
image would be the featured image field would actually be inside post object, but I think the connection to the media library is post meta.
The featured image is currently in a meta.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, all of the content that's related to a post specifically. And the reason why you make a custom meta box is because sometimes you want data to be presented on a page or a post or a custom post type that is handled differently than the content or the title, and you don't have that option out of the box with WordPress. So you add a custom meta box, like for example, if you want to say a subtitle. A lot of people like to have subtitles on their posts. That's a really simple and intuitive example that a lot of people think of. Why can't I add a subtitle? Well, let's add a meta box that will allow you to add a subtitle, and then that data is stored, but then you have to actually do something with it and output it onto a post or a page for it to be viewable. So there's a lot of different solutions for that, which I think we're going to be talking about. Is that about what you're looking for?
It's exactly what I was looking for.
The custom meta box quiz, and I had to ask the audience for a little bit of support. But
yeah, I mean, I could not have explained it better. It's when you need just extra data that's not available to you by default out of the box with WordPress, and it comes up a lot whether you're building something simple for a client or you're building a enterprise level application. So there's a couple of plugins out there that do a good job of helping out along the way, and I think that I talked about this podcast as let's find the best one, but there really isn't a best one, is there? There's some really good ones, and for every person that works with meta boxes or these plugins, one plugin will most likely be the best one for them and their solution. So that's what I really want to get to the base on. So let's do a quick what is each one of these plugins? And I know we have two people from Pods here, so there's no real pressure here, but we need to keep this kind of unanimous and a little less biased. But let's start with pods. I guess, Jim, you might be a good person to start with. Why don't you explain what is pods and how does it work in the whole ecosystem of the post meta?
Well, Pods is a custom framework. It's a custom content management framework. So let's say you actually have a site for a client and suddenly they want to add on like staff members and services and maybe have like a services table by staff. If you could do that with with custom meta boxes, but with Pods you would basically go, I'm going to extend the users table, create a thing called staff, allow my staff to actually be able to put in a biography, um, allow my folks to actually, put in more information about themselves, put a picture up, that sort of thing. And then you'd add like a services pod, and you'd put all your little services in there, like haircut, pedicure, whatever, with prices, and then attach it by or link them together by your users. And then you can display all that on the website very easily for the client. And that's kind of what you can do with pods. Is like we basically allow you to create custom post types, custom taxonomies, create relationships between them, and make them all work together. And extend existing post types like users and stuff like that.
Can you associate a pod of content, I guess, to an existing post type? Like, can I say, I already have this post type defined, I now want to add I guess a pod, is in your terminology, to it, and only to that one custom post type?
Yes, you can. That's the best thing about it, is that you can make your relationships be very specific. So like if you only want to show those particular meta boxes on particular post types or on a post or on a page or on a user field, you can do that.
And just to be clear, I think I haven't personally messed with pods too much, but do you guys deal a lot with the templating aspect, and how do you get the data that you've created onto the template, onto the theme?
We have two methods typically. We have both I actually have three methods. You have the WordPress way. You can use the WP Get Post Meta and actually incorporate that into your WordPress theme template files. We also have our own Pods API, so you can use our Pods functions to get at those particular things. Some of them are a little simpler. Or, again, it's also in PHP. Or you can use our Pods templates, which are kind of like a blend between HTML and little magic tags. And you can kind of go into an editor, build out your little template, and allow those items to show where you want them on the page, either by shortcode, by widget, or by actually using like an auto template function that says, okay, I'm on a school post, let's show that particular template for school.
Very cool. All right, so Matt, I know you have some experience with one of these. Which one do you prefer, and why do you prefer that one?
I've used CMB2 the most. It is a plugin on the repo, but mostly I see most plugin authors and theme authors, or even freelancers building out sites using just the library itself straight from GitHub in order to add fields to their page. And yeah, just like Jim said, I think with CMB2 the best way to output it on the front end is just using Get Post Meta. I've heard some people even argue like there are functions that even like ACF has the field or get the field that it uses in order to output things on the front end, but really those functions are just basically calling Get Post Meta in one way or another. So why have a function that calls another function that basically calls another function? Kind of like function inception. So just rather try to get to the root of outputting it as easily and directly as you can. So I think Get Post Meta is the best way, but all of that does require being able to fiddle with your theme template files, and that's not for the light of heart typical kind of website builder WordPress user. And I think that's the reason why plugins like types and views were created, was to basically address that more for more of the website builder type folks who want to be like, okay, I'm going to build a field on the back end. Okay, I get it. It's not going to output automatically. Then I'll go over here to this view thing and create a view, and then it will output on the front end for me. And that's a little it. I don't really enjoy that plugin all that much, but I think it has a good purpose. But in general, we use CMB2, and on our Give website and on WordPress, we use ACF, just because the repeater field is kind of really, really, really good.
Yeah, I find that too. What do you like about CMB2 versus ACF, since you're kind of using both?
CMB2 is just really easy for a developer. You just drop the library in and require their Bootstrap file, and then you can just start building out fields with a simple array. It's just really simple, and it's pretty light overall. It's not a gigantic library, so it's really easy to just drop it into your plugin or your theme and run with it. That's what I like the most about it. The thing I like that I struggle with it is the repeater field is just not there yet. It's come leaps and bounds, but it's just, when you start to reorder repeating fields and stuff, it just gets a little crazy. But ACF is excellent just because it's really rock solid. Like, I rarely have problems with it. If there's a problem, it's because I'm doing a weird function, not because of it. So
I actually like ACF a lot. I find that it's a good base to get a lot of your meta boxes in easily. I like CMB2 also, but only when I'm dealing with custom applications or something a little more custom, where I can just inject the library. I've been playing around with ACF's PHP a little bit more lately, so actually using a local environment to set up the fields and then exporting them to a PHP file and then hiding there's actually really cool, I think it's a filter in action that ACF has to actually hide ACF from the admin, so it's not an admin menu anymore, which is really great, in enterprise or even in freelancing and that's always been my main concern with ACF, is it's always been there, and then you're going to have some client who doesn't know what they're doing, and all of a sudden their post meta is now completely gone, or they've changed something, and now all their pages, all the templates are all broken. I do like the fact that I can keep the PHP there, so I can actually define out the ACF fields that I need, the custom fields I need per post type in a PHP file, which then can be put into like our Git repository and then version. So if we need to add a field or remove a field, it's all there done in versioning, as well as just removing it from the admin. The one aspect that I like CMB2 better is that even though it's a little bit harder to set up the first time, so it's hard to set up the fields the first time around, you don't need the plugin there. So like if a client looks at their installed plugins, they don't see CMB2. They'll just see your custom plugin, whatever you created. While advanced custom fields, you still need to see it there. So if they deactivate it, again, they're going to ruin your whole website, and it's not going to be there anymore. I don't like the get field, or get field or the field. However, I find that using get post meta with ACF, their naming conventions are kind of weird. So if you really wanted to do something where you're doing get post meta, I find that I end up looking into the database a lot to making sure, all right, how did you guys name this thing? Because I only want this thing, and I get how to use get post meta, but you guys named it something really weird, so I don't really know how that works.
Yeah, there is a logic to it. I mean, it's typically like the section name and then like the field, but it's a pain to put that math together to figure out just what the name of the post meta is for one field at a time.
Yeah, and forget about it if you're trying to get a repeating field going with get post meta. Like, at that point I might as well just use their have rows or whatever their new function is. I forgot. Scott, you're working on something pretty cool. We talked about this in the pre-show, and I wasn't really going to bring it up, but I don't know, we're talking about it, and it's just so cool. I kind of feel like you have to bring it up now. I want to know, why don't you explain what you're working on, which is the API fields, the Fields API custom feature plugin. Sorry, don't know the name exactly, but how does that play into this whole thing, and how is it going to make kind of our lives easier and better going forward?
Sure. And I just wanted to add something to what Matt was saying about the CMB2. I am a contributor on the CMB2, and Pods is going to be integrating CMB2 as a library for its use. So we're doing a lot of things to push CMB2 forward, and one of those things is the repeater field. We're adding loop fields to Pods 3.0, and during that process, we have rewritten the repeater field somewhat in terms of markup and the JavaScript, and we're working with Micah Woods to do a bunch of backbone stuff, some really cool stuff there. It's getting really close to having a PR ready, but the major work we did was nesting. So now you can nest things properly. So if you have a nested group, you can have groups inside of groups and fields inside of the groups that are inside of groups or whatever. So there's a lot more nesting ability specifically for our purposes of loop fields. We want to at least be able to nest 3 levels deep. So those are some things that we're improving in CMB2, and I definitely understand right now where it is. It's just not very useful. That's why things like ACF are really useful in those regards. Like types has a loop field as well. So those are, and CF Custom Field Suite has loop fields as well. So there's a lot of really cool repeater things that you could do with those plugins that are just not super possible with CMB2. But back to the good talk. Fields API is a feature plugin project that we're working on for a future WordPress release. Right now, we have a lot of time spent into it. About 80 hours I've spent as part of my time at 10up. They've given me 100 hours specifically for this latest round, but I had about 20 or 30 hours before that, which wasn't really much to like announce, but the 100 hours is a big milestone because the first bit of time was just to make it, see if it would work, and I did, but we needed a lot more time. So in terms of the Fields API though, what can it do for plugins? Will it take them away? Will it make them all useless? No. Pods will continue to exist. CMB2 will be strengthened. ACF, Custom Field Suite, types, pick list, all sorts of things will be done a lot more easily because they won't have to rely on their old library parts for registering fields, storing the fields in their own API, and all those sort of things. Of course, there will be some period of backwards compatibility where they'll have to still retain the code and possibly maintain 2 different parts of it, but the goal is overall we're not worrying about the last release and this release compatibility. We're worrying about long-term effects of a Fields API. So before custom post types was implemented, you surely had backwards compatibility issues, but now we don't even think about it. It's not even a thing. So that's the mindset we're in right now. We're not really worrying about what's that going to cost for your plugin right now. It's just a little bit of extra effort on your side, but to take advantage of this thing that's going to power WordPress as a whole for its future is super, super important for you to get on board, because once you do this, you get a number of benefits from the Fields API. There's ability to talk to apps like the WordPress app. It can't really see your custom fields or your meta boxes for your post types. With the Fields API, if you register your fields through Pods or through Advanced Custom Fields, Custom Field Suite, pick list, types, whatever it might be, or by code, then you can actually access all these structures, all these data structures. All of a sudden, Yoast would know what other custom fields you may have registered to your post type. Right now, all you can see is the meta. So you can see the full list of meta keys for a post. You can see all the meta values for those things, but they're not typed. It doesn't give you metadata on that information. So this Fields API sort of enables you to register your control types and your structures and say, I have a book post type, I have an author field on it, I have an ISBN number on it, and this is going to be a text field, and I have a year field that is just strictly a number or a year date, or I have a published date, and this is strictly a date field. So there's things that don't necessarily have to have the word date in the meta key, and all of a sudden a plugin or a theme or an app can know, oh, this is actually a date type because this is what the Fields API tells me it is. So you can have properly typed information and be able to utilize it more easily, and for things like the meta query to be able to utilize it without having to automatically tell you in your code to have your own type in there so it can cast it properly. Maybe it can automatically detect that. So there's things that this thing has far-reaching effects for, and it's not just the post type editor. It's the settings API, the widget forms, possibly the user area, term editor. Now that we have term meta in 4.4. Lots of different areas that we can implement the Fields API across WordPress as a whole. And so if we can get that going and get it implemented, especially with Helen, who's Sandy, she's our spearheaded sort of core developer, core committer for WordPress, sponsor type of person, and she's hopefully going to get us a big foot in the door, maybe half of our body in the door at least, to be able to get this in front of all the core committers and get them to approve it, hopefully. Especially with the important community summit coming up and WordCamp US. So lots of things we want to do ASAP.
So one of the cool things, if I'm understanding it right, is that before I even start looking at post meta for a post, I could potentially see what post meta should be there before assuming that it's there or not there. Like,
right.
I could be
right.
like, well, this post meta needs
saved to it yet. You'll know, or even if that field's never been saved to any post ever before, but it's registered, you would know what type of field to expect if it was there.
And if you associate that field to a post type or something like that, I will know that if I'm getting a post from the book post type, I should also expect it to have, you know, the ISBN number and all that kind of data.
Right. Yeah, and you'll know like specific information for each post type, and that's the goal, to just be able to have an API to register all these things and store it all in a standardized way, because all these plugins, there's hundreds of plugins now that do custom field type of things, or anything that have their own API that handles that sort of thing. They may not just be a custom field plugin, but like Yoast, they have to have some sort of integration with post types and terms and users. So this would just standardize that integration. They could still override the UI and output whatever custom control types they want to register, and all sorts of things they can still do, but it's in a structure that can play nicely.
Okay. So while we have, 5-10 minutes or so left, I just wanted to, let's create, there has to be use cases where one of these plugins, and we've kind of gone through some of the main ones already and kind of said some pros and cons, or some pros and why we use them. But for someone who is just getting into it, Scott, you were saying earlier that sometimes you guys will say don't use pods. Can you give me an example for when someone, or maybe Jim, this might be for you too, when should someone maybe turn away from pods and look at CMB2 or look at some of the other plugins?
Well, CMB2 is going to be from a code basis. So if the person coming to the project is not touching code at all, that is the last thing they want to use. ACF might make more sense if they're familiar with the WordPress backend. Sometimes I've actually found with folks coming to me about pods, if they have a pretty good idea of what they're wanting to do, pods is actually pretty good to use, because you can do pretty much every single bit of it completely from the backend and never touch a bit of code.
And there is a new plugin for CMB2 developed by a third party. It's a CBToYouI plugin, which actually adds a UI, and it's built using CMB2. So it's like its own post type for the UI option. So you can actually register new meta boxes and fields, but it's Inception. So it's CMB2 UI. It's built with CMB2, but it lets you add new things for CMB2. Which was pretty cool, but if you don't want to touch code, CMB2 may be less useful, but using that plugin could help. If you want internationalization, of course, types is a great choice because it's built by the WP multilingual plugin people. It's got lots of internationalization things. I see a lot of people using that for that purpose. ACF has a really strong repeater group, flexible content field type that can do some really complicated things in a pretty nicely laid out way. Very easy to use, very easy to understand. Pods, ACF, I think types, CMB2, pick lists, all these things have code that you can register your fields and your meta boxes and all sorts of things still. So they're all still possible with code. But something like CMB2 is a library, and it's much more useful for a developer who wants to have something that's not listed as a plugin, but ACF can be embedded, which is kind of a little more tricky. I think CB2 does it really nicely because CMB2 can be embedded as a library, and if it's embedded as a library multiple times, only the most recent one will load. So that's really cool because a big thing with us integrating CMB2 with pods, we're worried about making sure that we're not going to break anything with other people that are using CMB2. So I think that's going to be really nice. But there's things like ACF can be embedded. You can turn off the admin area, of course, with pods and ACF and all these other plugins. I think really it all depends on the feature sets. If you go to comparewp.org/cck, you can see a spreadsheet we put together, and this isn't just us. We've collaborated with all these other developers to make sure the information is correct. We try to keep it up to date. If you have information that's not there, feel free to contact us there. But that's a really super helpful spreadsheet. And if that wasn't mentioned once in this whole call, I thought we would be doing a disservice to people because really that has so much information there that you may be able to choose just based on that list. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of plugins, and there's more that aren't included. There's plugins there that are now defunct and no longer supported. So it's a crazy life cycle, and that's one of the things that Fields API is trying to help. But that spreadsheet.
What was the what was the URL again?
That is comparewp.org/cck.
All right, I'm gonna put it into the chat of our podcast here shortly, so everyone has it going forward. So I've seen that spreadsheet quite a few times, and there's definitely some awesome things that it shows as to what, and as this is going back to what Jim said, there are plugins that are mainly non-code based, so CMB2 is going to be focused on the code. I personally have used ACF for a long time, and I like that it's kind of both. I mean, I can use code when I want to, or export to code and then keep it completely outside of the admin interface. And then CMB2 being all code, and then pods being almost no code is pretty cool. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. They like running in the community that we have. There are a lot of people out there who are trying to, as freelancers, are trying to get the most out of WordPress without really diving too hard into the code. And I feel like types, pods, while they offer a way to use code to utilize them, they offer another aspect, which ACF's UI is great, but sometimes it can be confusing in itself. Like when I tell people who are novice or even or beginners, here's ACF, do your custom fields through it, they find it very confusing sometimes. Especially when it comes to how to associate my new field group, as they call it, to this post type. That sometimes is confusing to them.
Yeah, there's two different ways I've seen for plugins, and this is another thing. The interface for plugins that are based off of, or libraries that are based off of MetaBox is a lot more different than interfaces that are based off of content types. Like pods and types, they allow you to add those types and then add groups of fields and fields to those types specifically. ACF, Custom Field Suite, those are more MetaBox based, and you add those and you can add to multiple post types, but it's not structured in a way that can make as much sense, so it's kind of harder to keep track of 100 MetaBoxes, for instance. So it's definitely a lot easier if you come from the content type side. And it depends on the developer.
We're just about out of time here. One thing I wanted to bring up for someone who is coming into this who's never done post meta before, planning. We've talked about this in our content CPT and kind of content strategy, but this goes for content and post meta as well. No matter what plugin you're using, plan ahead. Plan your custom meta way before you start actually coding anything, because you're going to find, and I've found this more than enough times, that I'll put in a bunch of post meta and then all of a sudden I need to swap it all because I didn't plan it out right. So planning is crucial to just have a better experience with any of these plugins, no matter what you're doing. I know some of them are easy to swap out. So like with ACF, I find it is easy to, let's say, swap out this input field to a date field or something else. But then I have to go back to the template and change sometimes change the name or change the code around a little bit to reflect the new data that's coming in. So take a look at your data first, then figure out what boxes you need on top of your regular default post object, and then create them no matter what plugin you're using, because yeah, you're going to save yourself a whole bunch of time by planning first.
Yeah, and I think that even if you're trying out these different plugins, just try them out to see which one fits best. But switching between them can be very difficult, and that's one of those Fields API things. We want to try to make it easier.
So,
but yeah, that's another thing. Switching between field types, switching between post types, and switching between meta boxes, switching between plugins. Those are some hard things. Definitely, data architecture is the most important part of any development project.
Scott, also last thing, if someone wants to help contribute to your the Fields API project, how would they get a hold of you, or how they start contributing if they want to?
Well, you can get a hold of me at Twitter, Scott K. Clark, scottkclark.com, github.com/Scott K. Clark with a 0 instead of an O. Lots of different places, but you can also find us on Core Fields channel on WordPress Slack.
Cool. All right, guys, thank you very much. We'll see you guys next week.